Sasori, the puppet master of the Red Sand, also known as Sasori of the Red Sand. He was a name that once struck fear across the ninja world. Hailing from the hidden sand village, he was a genius puppeteer. But Sasori took things to another level. He turned his own body into a puppet, keeping only a tiny core to house his soul. That meant no pain, no fatigue, and no aging. What made Sasori so dangerous were his puppets. His deadliest weapon was the puppet made from the third Kozekage, who was once considered the strongest in Sand Village history. This puppet could use iron sand, a terrifying weapon capable of paralyzing chakra and morphing into countless deadly forms. On top of that, Sasori had an army of 100 puppets, each coated in deadly poison. He could control them all at once, making him a one-man army. But Sasori had weaknesses. His style was slower, relying heavily on controlling a wide area. If an opponent could break through his puppet army or fight him up close, he became much more vulnerable. He also needed preparation before battles, making him less adaptable in sudden encounters. This was shown clearly in his fight against Sakura and Chio. Even though Sakura wasn't that experienced at the time, with Chio's help, they managed to outsmart him and win. That fight proved Sasori wasn't an unbeatable final boss. He was strong, but not invincible. Still, Sasori remained incredibly dangerous against slower or less tactical enemies. His poisons and overwhelming puppet army were almost impossible to survive. He was ruthless, intelligent, and devastating from a distance, but vulnerable if pressured up close by fast. Strategic fighters. Jetsu, the shadow lurking in the dark. Jetsu was like a silent spy, always sneaky, rarely speaking, and usually appearing straight out of the shadows. But when it came to real combat, Jetsu was actually the weakest member of the Akatsuki. The truth is, Jetsu wasn't just one person. He was split into two parts, White Jetsu and Black Jetsu. Their specialty was spying, gathering intel, and pulling strings behind the scenes. Direct fighting? Almost non-existent. White Jetsu had this strange ability. He could use spore parasites to drain chakra from others. Sounds terrifying, right? But in reality, any skilled ninja could easily detect and neutralize him before he even had the chance to use it. During the Fourth Great Ninja War, thousands of White Jetsu clones were released to fight against the allied shinobi forces. Most of them were quickly crushed by higher-level ninja like Deidara and Mifune without much trouble. Black Jetsu, on the other hand, was more like the mastermind in the shadows. He always followed Madara, whispered in Obito's ear, and quietly moved pieces from the background. He could use wood release thanks to Hashirama's cells, but his abilities were weak and more supportive than offensive. Throughout the war, Black Jetsu didn't actually win against anyone. Even when fighting weakened enemies, he could only stall them for a short while, never actually defeating them. Compared to the other Akatsuki members, Jetsu simply wasn't built for direct combat. His true power was in scheming, trickery, and manipulation. If you imagine the Akatsuki as a giant chessboard, Jetsu wasn't a powerful piece like the rook or the knight. He was the invisible hand quietly moving the pieces without anyone noticing. Important, yes, but clearly not a warrior. Kakuzu, the undead leech. Kakuzu was another Akatsuki member who just wouldn't die easily. He had 5 hearts stolen from other ninja, so even if you destroyed one, he could still keep fighting. Sounds terrifying, right? But just like Hidan, Kakuzu wasn't exactly in the top tier of the Akatsuki. His greatest strength was his ability to use all 5 basic chakra natures. Something extremely rare. His body was sewn together with black threads, which he could extend to attack or bind enemies. On top of that, he carried masks that could fly around independently, each firing off devastating elemental attacks, wind, fire, lightning, and more. On paper, Kakuzu sounded almost unstoppable. But in reality, he was slow and predictable. During his fight against Team 10, Kakoshi's lightning blade destroyed one of his hearts. Later, Naruto stepped in and managed to finish him off with Rasengan twice. His other big weakness was strategy. Kakuzu wasn't great at handling smart or fast opponents. His fighting style was straightforward, just overwhelming power thrown directly at his enemies. If you were clever or fast, you could beat him. Compared to Hidan, Kakuzu was definitely stronger and more versatile. But against the stronger Akatsuki, he was still far from the top. His biggest strength wasn't winning, it was simply refusing to stay down. Hidan, the stubborn immortal. Next up, we've got Hidan, the guy who makes everyone frustrated just because he's so hard to kill. Hidan really had only one main technique. But he clung to it like his life depended on it. His biggest strength? He simply couldn't die. Thanks to a cult known as Jashin, Hidan could take massive blows, even something like a Rasengan, yet still walk away laughing. His deadliest move was a bizarre ritual. He'd drink his opponent's blood, draw a symbol on the ground, and then stab himself. Every injury he inflicted on his own body would instantly transfer to his victim. If you didn't know about this technique, he was an absolute nightmare to deal with. But once you figured it out, Hidan became a lot easier to handle. His flaws were obvious: he was slow, reckless, and basically just charged in, swinging his scythe like a madman with zero strategy. In his fight against Team 10, Shikamaru quickly figured out how his ability worked. With some clever planning, he tricked Hidan, trapped him in a pit, and sealed him away forever. Technically Hidan is still alive down there, but his career as a fighter? Pretty much over. Compared to Jetsu, Hidan was more dangerous in one-on-one combat because of his immortality. But that didn't make him strong, it just made him annoying. Once you understood his tricks, beating him was only a matter of time. He was like a ticking time bomb, but one with a very obvious and easy to remove fuse. Deidara, art is an explosion. Deidara always shouted about art. But don't let that artist vibe fool you. He was once a terrorist from the Stone Village and easily one of the most dangerous members of the Akatsuki. Thanks to his Kekkei Genkai, Deidara could mold special clay with the mouths on his palms, turning his sculptures into deadly bombs. He had multiple levels of explosives, C1 for precise small blasts, C3 for massive city-destroying bombs, and the terrifying C4 Kakuru, a microscopic bomb that created invisible nanite-like explosives. Anyone who inhaled them would explode from the inside out. Reduced to dust in seconds. He usually fought from the sky, riding on a giant clay dragon while raining bombs down on his enemies. That made him extremely mobile and very hard to counter. He even defeated Gaara, the Kozekage. Despite Gaara using everything, he had to protect the Sand Village. Later, he nearly killed Sasuke in their fight. The only reason he lost was because Sasuke's lightning-style techniques countered his clay bombs, and Sasuke tricked him with genjutsu. When pushed to the edge, Deidara used his ultimate self-destruct technique, C0, turning his entire body into a massive bomb in one final attempt to take his opponent with him. Sasuke barely survived. But it showed how far Deidara was willing to go for victory and his art. His weaknesses? He was hot-headed, overconfident, and tended to act before thinking. While his chakra reserves were solid, he wasn't as monstrous as someone like Kisame. Against enemies with high speed, strong genjutsu, or aerial mobility, Deidara struggled. But make no mistake, one wrong move against him, and you weren't just losing. You'd be blown to pieces, turned into a literal work of art. Konan, the paper angel who was underestimated. Many fans brushed her off as just a side character in the Akatsuki. But that's a huge mistake. Behind her calm, quiet personality was one of the most creative and deadly fighting styles in all of Naruto. Her paper jutsu wasn't just for show, it was lethal. Konan could turn her entire body into thousands of paper sheets, making physical attacks almost useless against her. She could form razor-sharp blades, unleash endless explosive tags, and even fly with paper wings. In battle, she was like a storm of paper, unpredictable, and incredibly hard to hit. Her most iconic moment was her fight against Obito. To protect Nagato's legacy, Konan spent years preparing a trap with 600 billion explosive tags, enough to keep detonating for 10 minutes straight. She calculated Obito's phasing ability down to the exact second and nearly killed him. Someone considered one of the strongest in the entire series. He only survived because he used Izanagi, rewriting reality itself to escape death. That fight proved Konan wasn't weak at all, she was a master strategist. Unlike Kisame's brute force or Deidara's flashy explosions, Konan's strength came from intelligence and precision. Compared to Sasori, she was faster, harder to hit, and much more versatile in tactics. Of course, she had weaknesses. Paper burned easily, making her vulnerable to fire-style attacks. She could also be caught off guard by sudden assaults or powerful ocular jutsu like the Sharingan. But the fact that she nearly killed Obito speaks volumes. If her sea of paper bombs had been aimed at anyone else, they wouldn't have survived. Konan wasn't just the quiet girl of Akatsuki, she was a paper angel. A storm of death disguised in silence. Kisame, the shark monster of the Akatsuki. Kisame wasn't about subtlety or philosophy, he was pure raw power. Nicknamed the tailless-tailed beast, His chakra reserves were nearly equal to actual Jinchuriki. Once he entered a battlefield, he transformed it into his personal ocean of death. Even without water around, Kisame could create vast floods. His water-style jutsu weren't just massive. They were devastating. He could form giant water prisons, trapping enemies inside a moving sphere of water while swimming freely like a predator. His chakra was so immense it could reshape landscapes. And then there was Samada, his living sword. Samada could sense chakra, devour it, and even fuse with Kisame to transform him into a true monster. This made him not only powerful but nearly impossible to wear down. He could heal by absorbing chakra while beating his opponents down relentlessly. He once overwhelmed Killer Bee, forcing him to retreat, and later fought Might Guy, who had to open the seventh gate, a technique deadly to the user, just to defeat him. That shows how insanely durable and dangerous Kisame really was. Kisame excelled in prolonged battles. Against Deidara, he could absorb the chakra from his clay bombs. Against Sasori, he could tank poisons and crush puppets with sheer power. His stamina and chakra made him one of the hardest members to deal with. But Kisame wasn't perfect. He lacked speed and was vulnerable to strong genjutsu from people like Itachi or Obito. He also became weaker in dry or confined areas where he couldn't unleash his water-style jutsu. Still, when it came to raw strength and endurance, Kisame was unmatched. He didn't need illusions or tricks, just water, his sword, and overwhelming force. Itachi Uchiha, the cursed genius. Itachi was never ordinary. Even as a child, he surpassed grown ninja, becoming an Anbu captain at a young age. He later slaughtered his entire clan in one night, carrying a burden of pain and secrets that made him one of the most tragic figures in the series. When he joined the Akatsuki, Itachi wasn't loud or flashy. He was calm, precise, and terrifyingly effective. His Mongekyo Sharingan granted him legendary techniques, Amaterasu, black flames that burned until the target was reduced to nothing, Tsukuyomi, a genjutsu so powerful it could torture someone for days in just a few seconds, and Susanoo, a massive warrior spirit wielding the Totsuka blade, which sealed anything it pierced, and the Yatamira, which could block nearly any attack. But what made Itachi truly dangerous wasn't just his jutsu, it was his mind. He was always several steps ahead, ending battles before they even began. His final fight against Sasuke wasn't just combat. It was a carefully planned farewell, where every move had meaning. Even after death, his influence continued to shape Sasuke's path and protect the Hidden Leaf village. Itachi's weaknesses were his failing health and limited chakra reserves. He was sick for much of his life, forcing him to fight with extreme precision, using only the most efficient techniques. In his last battle, he held back to avoid harming Sasuke, even while on the brink of death. But despite his illness, Itachi's brilliance made him nearly unbeatable. When resurrected in the Fourth Great Ninja War, he fought alongside Naruto and Bee, taking down Nagato. He even broke free from Kabuto's Edo Tensei control, something almost no one else could do. Itachi may not have had the raw brute strength of Pain or Obito, but his perfect balance of skill, intelligence, and sheer presence made him one of the greatest ninja in history. He wasn't just a fighter, he was a legend, forever remembered as the tragic genius of the Uchiha. Nagato, Pain, the man who carried pain to find peace. Pain wasn't just a name, it was an entire belief system. In the Akatsuki, Pain stood like a god, cold, calm, and with a clear sense of purpose. But behind the six bodies everyone knew as Pain was the real mastermind, Nagato Uzumaki, a war-orphan who lost his family and friends to endless conflict. With the Rinnegan, the most legendary eye technique, Nagato created the six paths of pain. Each body had a specific role. The Deva path could push and pull with gravity, powerful enough to level Konoha with a single Shinra Tensei. The animal path could summon monstrous creatures. The Preta path absorbed chakra-based attacks. The human path could rip out souls and read minds. The Asura path transformed into a mechanical weapon of war. And finally, the Naraka path could interrogate and revive allies. Together, these six bodies fought as one, overwhelming even the strongest ninja by dividing their attention. What made Pain terrifying wasn't just his abilities, it was his philosophy. He truly believed that only through shared suffering could humanity understand peace. He wasn't fighting for wealth or power, but for a twisted version of justice. We saw his strength firsthand during the invasion of Konoha. With one attack, he wiped out the entire village. He even defeated Sage Mode Naruto, something no one else had done at that point. But Naruto didn't beat Pain with fists, he beat him with words. By reminding Nagato of his old ideals and showing him another path, Naruto convinced him to abandon his hatred. In the end, Nagato sacrificed his life to revive everyone in Konoha. His final act of redemption. Nagato's weakness was his true body. Frail and crippled, he relied on machines to stay alive and burned through his energy every time he used a major jutsu. The longer the fight went, the weaker he became. Even so, Pain remains one of the most powerful and profound characters in Naruto. He wasn't a villain driven by greed, he was a broken man trying to reshape the world through pain. Obito Uchiha, the puppet master of the shadows. If Pain was the face of the Akatsuki, Obito was the hand moving the strings from the shadows. For most of the series, no one knew his true identity. Behind masks and fake names, he manipulated events that changed the entire ninja world. Obito had once been thought dead. He was Kakoshi's childhood friend, crushed under rocks during a mission. But instead of dying, he was saved and twisted by Madara Uchiha. From that moment, Obito abandoned his old dreams and became one of the deadliest threats in Naruto. His greatest weapon was the Mangekyo Sharingan. With Kamui, he could phase parts of his body into another dimension, letting attacks pass right through him. He could also teleport instantly, making him nearly untouchable in battle. On top of that, he wielded Izanagi, a forbidden technique that let him rewrite reality itself at the cost of a Sharingan. Combined with fire style, taijutsu, and his intellect, Obito was an all-around powerhouse. But he didn't stop there. After gaining the Rinnegan and becoming the Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails, Obito reached godlike power. He faced the combined forces of Naruto, Sasuke, the Tailed Beasts, and the entire allied shinobi army, and still held his ground. The fact that he survived Konan's 600 billion paper bomb trap, or outsped Minato, the Yellow Flash, shows just how terrifying he was. Still, Obito's true danger wasn't just his strength, it was his manipulation. He fooled the Akatsuki, corrupted the Hidden Mist Village, and even resurrected Madara. Nearly every major event in Naruto, like the Nine Tails attack on Konoha or the Fourth Great Ninja War, was part of Obito's plan. Yet, Obito's story was also one of tragedy. He began as a boy who wanted to be Hokage, someone full of kindness and dreams. But after losing Rin, he was consumed by grief and fell into darkness. In the end, though, he found redemption, sacrificing himself to protect Naruto and the world he once tried to destroy. Obito wasn't just one of the strongest members of the Akatsuki, he was its greatest manipulator. He turned the world upside down, not only with his power but also with his cunning. A villain, a puppet master, and ultimately, a tragic hero.
The Akatsuki wasn't just some random group of rogue shinobi thrown together for convenience. It was built on a fixed, intentional structure, 10 members, each one corresponding to a single finger on a massive and menacing statue known as the Gedo Mazo. That structure wasn't symbolic fluff, it had real, functional meaning. Every member wore a unique ring, and each ring belonged to a specific finger of the statue. Because of that strict limitation, the Akatsuki could never have more than 10 core members at any moment. The rings weren't jewelry, they were keys. Keys that defined each member's position, role, and eligibility to participate in the group's most important ritual, the sealing of the tailed beasts. These rings were permanent, one-of-a-kind tools. They couldn't be duplicated, and that detail ended up shaping the entire history of the organization. For example, when Orochimaru abandoned the Akatsuki, he took his ring with him. That missing ring was never recreated or reassigned, meaning that, from that moment on, the group lost the ability to operate at full capacity. The empty finger on the Gedo Mazo couldn't activate during the sealing ritual, slowing the process and weakening the overall power output. Later on, when members like Hidan and Kakuzu were defeated, the exact same problem resurfaced: no ring, no replacement, no full lineup. A new recruit could only join if they recovered the previous member's ring. No ring meant no place in the circle. That's how strict the system was. Alright, with that foundation out of the way, let's dive into each ring and the deeper meaning behind them, starting first with one of the most iconic figures in the entire story. Itachi's ring, the Crimson Seal. Itachi's scarlet ring sits on the index finger of his right hand. The index finger is traditionally associated with focus, precision, and deliberate decision-making, qualities that define Itachi's entire personality. He never acts without intention. Every move he makes is calculated, measured, and aligned with a deeper purpose. The kanji on his ring represents a deep red, a shade often associated with cinnabar. And that color carries a lot of symbolism when it comes to Itachi. First, red calls back to the Uchiha's Sharingan, the clan's trademark and Itachi's primary source of power. His eyes, glowing red, are a constant reminder of the lineage he carries and the burden he bears. Second, red is the color of blood. The blood of the Uchiha clan, the people he was forced to kill to protect the Leaf Village under a classified mission. The ring's color becomes a quiet echo of the pain and sacrifice he carried alone for years. Third, in Japanese and Chinese culture, deep red is also tied to fire. This pairs naturally with Itachi's affinity for fire-style techniques, especially Amaterasu, black flames said to come from a sun deity, burning eternally. Even though Itachi was not the most proactive member during the sealing rituals, his ring played an essential role as one of the chakra focal points. It acted as a conduit, channeling energy into the Gedo Mazo. In short, the Crimson Ring isn't just an accessory, it's a subtle symbol of everything Itachi embodies: power, suffering, sacrifice, and the double life he was forced to live. It reflects the tragedy of a man who carried the world's hatred to protect the very people who would never understand him. Pain's ring, the origin of all things. Pain's ring sits on the right thumb, a position symbolizing dominance, leadership, and control. In Japanese mysticism and chakra philosophy, the thumb represents willpower and the capacity to lead, perfectly fitting for Pain, who acted as the face, commander, and ideological spearhead of the Akatsuki. The kanji on his ring reads, Rei, meaning zero or nothingness. Although nothing may sound like nihilism, within philosophical symbolism, zero represents the beginning before form, the origin point of all creation. Pain is exactly that within the Akatsuki, the starting point, the rebirth, the ideological reset. While Nagato was the true mastermind, only Yahiko's body, the diva path, wore the ring. Yahiko was the original founder of the Akatsuki during its idealistic stage, when it was a movement for peace, not destruction. His death and transformation into Pain marked the symbolic and literal rebirth of the organization. The concept of zero aligns with Pain's vision, a world reset through controlled destruction, a new beginning born from chaos. This ties directly into the Gedo Mazo, the vessel designed to accumulate the chakra of the tailed beasts and reshape the world. During the sealing rituals, Pain's ring glowed brighter than most, reflecting his central role in channeling chakra and controlling the process. His ring wasn't just a sign of authority, it was a functional anchor in the group's power system. Together, these symbols reinforce one truth. Pain's ring didn't represent emptiness, it represented the reset button to reforge the world. Hidan's ring, the power of three. Hidan wears his ring on the left index finger, a finger traditionally connected to ritual, direction, and command. Considering Hidan treats every battle like a religious ceremony for Jashin, the symbolism couldn't be more accurate. The kanji on his ring reads, San, meaning, 3, and in Hidan's life, the number 3 shows up everywhere. His scythe has 3 blades. His forehead protector has 3 scratches. The symbol of Jashin is a triangle, 3 sides. His combat style follows ritualistic 3-step patterns. Even his survival history mirrors this motif. Hidan endured 3 near-death encounters, against Izumo and Kotetsu, against Asuma severing his head, and finally against Shikamaru, who dismembered and buried him. Despite all that, Hidan cannot die. He's a living symbol of immortality, repetition, and cycles, concepts deeply tied to the number 3 in many cultures. There are also hints that Hidan's ring helps stabilize chakra during his Jashin rituals, particularly during the tailed beast sealing ceremonies. The ring's finger placement aligns perfectly with the Gedo Mazo's corresponding finger, forming a complete ritual circle where each finger contributes to a collective pattern. In essence, Hidan's ring reflects everything about him: ritualistic, obsessive, immortal, and cyclic. Orochimaru's ring, the empty sky. Orochimaru's ring sits on the left pinky, the smallest and most isolated finger. A spot that almost screams, "You're part of the group, but not truly one of us." Which perfectly describes Orochimaru's role: brilliant, powerful, but disloyal and ultimately incompatible with the Akatsuki's goals. The kanji on his ring reads, Ku, meaning, sky, emptiness, or void. All 3 meanings describe him. First, emptiness represents the gap he left behind when he fled, taking his ring with him. Without that ring, the Akatsuki permanently lost the ability to operate at full capacity. The sealing rituals became slower and less effective. Second, sky symbolizes boundless ambition. Orochimaru was never meant to be contained. His goals, immortality, Mastery of all jutsu, transcendence, were too large for any organization. He wanted a sky to himself. A realm where nothing limited his evolution. Even after leaving, Orochimaru continued to affect the group. When Itachi severed his hand during battle, Orochimaru preserved the detached arms solely to keep his reign. That act alone prevented the Akatsuki from ever achieving a full 10-man formation again. His ring is less a badge of membership and more a permanent reminder of a void the group could never fill. Konan's ring, the silent balance. Konan wears her ring on the middle finger of her right hand. A placement associated with balance, neutrality, and stability. This symbolism fits her perfectly. As one of the original founders of the Akatsuki and Nagato's closest confidant, Konan was the stabilizing force within a group full of extreme personalities. She didn't seek attention, didn't act impulsively, she simply upheld the mission with calm, quiet resolve. The kanji carved into her ring means white. And if you think about it, white captures Konan's essence. Her paper ninjutsu takes the form of countless sheets of blank, white paper, delicate in appearance, yet unbelievably lethal in her hands. She doesn't rely on brute strength. Her power comes from precision, calculation, and mastery over her technique. White is also associated with coolness and emotional restraint. Exactly how Konan operates. She rarely displays anger or desperation. Even when she fights alone, as she does in her iconic battle against Obito, she acts from loyalty, not emotion. Her commitment to Nagato's ideals is absolute. In many ways, Konan is the blank canvas upon which Pain's philosophy was written. She never deviates from the path they believed in. During the tailed beast sealing rituals, her ring served as one of the conduits that channeled chakra into the Gedo Mazo. Though she wasn't as flashy as Pain or as feared as Itachi, her presence was essential. Her ring symbolizes what she has always been: quiet, steady, reliable, and impossible to replace. Deidara's ring, art in blue and green. Deidara's ring sits on the right index finger, a finger connected to creativity, expression, and individuality. Out of all Akatsuki members, Deidara embodies artistic expression the most. To him, every explosion is a masterpiece, a fleeting moment of destructive beauty. His signature philosophy, art is an explosion, sums up his entire worldview. The kanji on his ring reads, Sei, which can be interpreted as either blue or green. Both colors reflect different sides of Deidara. Blue symbolizes control and calmness, traits he displays when manipulating his explosive clay with absolute precision. Green represents vitality and energy, matching his fiery personality, unpredictable fighting style, and relentless competitiveness. There's also a subtle thematic contrast between Deidara's ring and Itachi's crimson one. In many cultures, red and blue are opposing colors. And in the story, Deidara sees Itachi not out of hatred, but as a rival in art. Itachi's illusions represent permanence and stillness, while Deidara's explosions represent motion and impermanence. Their rings reflect that fundamental artistic clash. During the tailed beast sealing rituals, Deidara's ring played a vital role by anchoring his chakra into the Gedo Mazo. That's why, after losing a hand in battle, he immediately worried about retrieving his ring, not out of pride, but because without it, he would no longer hold a place in the Akatsuki. The ring wasn't just symbolic, it was practical, functional, and essential. Zetsu's ring, the hidden boar. Zetsu's ring sits on the right pinky finger, a placement often overlooked, just like him. But that's exactly what makes the symbolism perfect. Zetsu isn't a frontline fighter, or a flashy member by any means. Instead, he is the watcher, the informer, the manipulator operating from within the shadows. The kanji on his ring is associated with a wild boar, an animal symbolizing endurance, cunning, and persistence. Across his two personas, White Zetsu and Black Zetsu, these traits manifest clearly. White Zetsu is more playful, more talkative, and often used as a scout or decoy. Black Zetsu, on the other hand, is far more sinister. He is the physical embodiment of Kaguya's will, quietly manipulating events for centuries. Like the boar, Zetsu never acts hastily. He is patient, he waits, he endures, and when he moves, it's for a calculated long-term purpose. He watches over battles, cleans up corpses, tracks Jinchuriki, and ensures the sealing rituals proceed without interruption. His role is invisible but foundational. Many fans believe the boar symbol runs deeper, not only representing resilience, but also representing hidden destruction and rebirth. This mirrors Zetsu's real role, a silent agent orchestrating the revival of Kaguya. His reign, therefore, is a reminder that even the smallest presence can hold the darkest influence. Without Zetsu, the Akatsuki's plans would collapse instantly. The Jade Ring, worn by Sasori. Then Tobi. One of the most fascinating rings belongs to Sasori first. And later Tobi. This ring is worn on the left thumb. A position associated with lasting authority and long-term influence. The kanji on the ring means, jade. A stone that, in Eastern cultures, symbolizes purity, endurance, and timeless beauty. For Sasori, jade reflects his obsession with eternal art. He transformed his own body into a puppet, believing that true beauty is that which never decays. In his mind, permanence equals perfection. His ring symbolizes this desire to preserve beauty forever, just like jade that remains flawless over centuries. But when Sasori dies and Tobi inherits the ring, its meaning shifts dramatically. Tobi, later revealed as Obito, represents something completely different. Jade no longer symbolizes permanence but rebirth. Obito changes, evolves, and reinvents himself over and over, from an idealistic boy to a masked prankster. Then to a manipulative mastermind. And ultimately to a man aiming to reshape the entire world. For him, Jade becomes the catalyst for transformation rather than preservation. This handoff marks a turning point in the Akatsuki's identity. Under Sasori, the group is still functioning like a mercenary squad. Under Tobi, the group evolves into a global threat with an apocalyptic mission. The left thumb position on the Gedo Mazo, representing authority and deep influence, fits both of them. Whether through puppet strings or manipulation of entire nations, both Sasori and Tobi pulled the threads that changed the world. Kisame's ring, the Southern Sea. Kisame's ring sits on the left index finger, a finger tied to leadership and direction. Even though Kisame wasn't the official leader, he acted as a frontline spear in many missions and consistently supported Itachi with unwavering loyalty. He didn't belong to any village anymore. His loyalty belonged entirely to the Akatsuki's cause. The kanji on his ring means, south. At first glance, it may sound vague, but the symbolism is on point. Kisame hails from the Mist Village, located near southern seas. His shark-like appearance, his water manipulation, and his monstrous chakra levels all match the nature of southern oceans, vast, deep, and dangerous. His sword, Samahata, literally fuses with him, turning Kisame into an even more fearsome aquatic predator. In Eastern philosophy, the south corresponds to the water element, reinforcing the connection between Kisame and his ring. There's also a thematic contrast with Kakuzu, whose ring symbolizes north. Together, north and south represent opposite poles, but both are essential to balance. Kisame's unwavering loyalty and brutal strength form one half of that dynamic. During the sealing rituals, Kisame's chakra, channeled through his ring, played a stabilizing role. He may not have been the most symbolically layered character, but his reliability and destructive power made him one of the pillars of the organization. Kakuzu's ring, the Northern Endurance. Kakuzu's ring is worn on the middle finger of his left hand, a finger associated with responsibility, discipline, and balance. This is fitting for someone like Kakuzu, who functions less like a shinobi following ideals and more like a calculating mercenary. He sees missions not as moral obligations but as business transactions. If the job pays well, he'll take it. If a teammate bothers him, he'll eliminate them without hesitation. The kanji on his ring represents north, forming a symbolic opposite to Kisame's south. Even though the series never explicitly emphasizes this connection, the contrast is meaningful. In Eastern symbolism, the north embodies endurance, stoicism, cold, and survival, attributes that align perfectly with Kakuzu's character. He is methodical, resilient, and incredibly difficult to kill. His unique ability to extend his lifespan by stealing and replacing hearts turns him into an embodiment of longevity. This theme matches the northern symbolism of persisting through harsh conditions, surviving long after others would fall. Kakuzu's temper is notoriously short, and he's known for killing his partners. The only reason he tolerated Hidan for so long was because Hidan simply couldn't die, making him the only teammate Kakuzu couldn't fire. Ironically, this unlikely partnership became one of the most iconic duos in the Akatsuki. During the tailed beast sealing rituals, Kakuzu's ring channeled his chakra into the Gedo Mazo. Even though his ring doesn't carry the sentimental depth of Itachi's or the thematic complexity of Pain's, it represents something the Akatsuki depended on: cold pragmatism. In a group filled with ideologues and extremists, Kakuzu was the necessary force of practicality, a reminder that the organization wasn't just a dream for world domination but also a machine fueled by resourcefulness, endurance, and survival. To the Akatsuki, North didn't mean leadership. It meant persistence, and Kakuzu embodied that word effortlessly. And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into all 10 Akatsuki rings and the symbolic meaning each one carries. These rings aren't just small details in the story. They're a hidden system that reveals how the organization works, how its power flows, and how its members reflect the roles they were destined to play. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to leave a like. It genuinely helps the channel grow and gives me the motivation to keep creating more deep dive content like this. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care, everyone.